you guys on board the show today. Another power hour for you. We'll be taking your calls and your texts and thoughts throughout the hour. 609-403-0973. That is the text board. Obviously, there's a lot to be said after a pitiful effort last night. And so I'll be hearing from you guys throughout the hour. But I want to give you my thoughts off the top here because I thought that there was one moment in the game last night that symbolized the entire Eagles season. There was one moment that I walked away and I just threw my hands in the air and said, that's it. And when it first happened, I got to be honest with you guys, I didn't think it was real. And that was the Jalen Hurts safety. Jalen Hurts did not have to take a safety in that moment of the game. There were a multitude of other outcomes that could have happened from that play. He could have thrown the ball away. He could have thrown a check down. He could have literally run not backward into the end zone. But instead, the Jalen Hurts safety was symbolic of the final month and a half of the Eagles season. Because the entire Eagles team, from the coaches to the players, have all been guilty of the following. There has been a lacking of self-awareness. There has been no urgency. There has been an express display of low football IQ. No backup plan when the first option goes wrong. And ultimately, people are just completely oblivious. That is exactly what happened to this Eagles team. And it was all encapsulated into one play. And a play that is not supposed to happen to a guy like Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is supposed to be this leader, this high football IQ, this elite level, just football guy when it comes to the intangibles. Everything that makes Jalen Hurts valuable. In one play, he just forgot everything. Now, look, guys can make a mistake, all right? One mistake, two mistakes, things happen. But in that moment, that was when I knew the Eagles season was officially over. Now, yes, I picked the Eagles to lose the game yesterday, but I never thought it would be that bad. I don't think most people thought it would be that bad either. I think most people thought if the Eagles were going to lose the game, it might be like 30-20. But they scored 9 points. And Devonta Smith, he gave the kind of effort that I told Mike Gill on the Sports Bash show on 97.3 ESPN earlier was similar to Terrell Owens. Terrell Owens, if you go back to that Super Bowl about 20 years ago, he was a man on a mission. He tried to will that Eagles team in the Super Bowl against the Patriots to win all by himself. And he almost did it by himself in that game. Now, Devonta was up against a much larger uphill battle. Because unlike Terrell Owens almost 20 years ago, Devonta Smith was playing on a football team that seemingly had zero clue what they should be doing. It felt like the entire game, there was no urgency to say, hey, come on, guys, wake up. We're playing the playoffs here. This is do or die here. And as soon as the game plan didn't work out, the Philadelphia Eagles were the opposite of Batman. They had no backup plan. Because if anybody knows anything about Batman, he's got 20 million backup plans. He's famous or infamous, who you ask for that. The Eagles were the opposite. The Eagles showed up with a plan, and as soon as it didn't work out, they looked lost, dazed, and confused. And for me, that completely falls number one on the head coach. There is no way that you cannot blame Nick Sirianni for what you have seen recently. There's no way that you can't look at Nick Sirianni and say this guy should keep his job. As former Super Bowl champion Chris Canty said this morning on Unsportsmanlike on 97.3 ESPN.
When he's sitting there talking about he's not worried about what's going to happen to him, you know why he's probably not worried? Because he knows what's going to happen to him. He's going to get fired. There has to be accountability when you have this kind of late season collapse. There has to be accountability when a team that is largely the same from a squad a year ago that got to the Super Bowl gets bounced in the first round of the playoffs. So you absolutely deserve to get fired today.
I love when he uses the word accountability, because accountability is a huge part of this conversation. There's way too much of guys saying we got to do better in the last month and a half. There was way too much rhetoric coming out of the Philadelphia Eagles. Chris Long said this last week on the GameNight podcast. Now, keep in mind, I am purposely going to only play audio from guys who won Super Bowls for the first couple segments here. You just heard from Chris Canty, Super Bowl champion. You are going to hear from 3 more Super Bowl champions and their perspective. Because if the ultimate goal is for the Eagles to win a championship again, I think that the voice and the opinion of these former champions matters. Now, accountability is what Chris Canty talked about. Well, part of the accountability comes down to getting up and saying we got to do better is not enough. This was after the Eagles lost to the Giants last weekend. Chris Long said this on the GameNight podcast. And I feel like as the days move on, as the hours keep ticking, this statement by Chris Long becomes more and more obvious that he was 100% right about this.
And I'm not saying I'm putting his head on a stake here, because I like Nick, but he would tell you it's not good enough. And after the game to just come out and be like, you know, this team will fight. That stuff is tired when you're not actually fighting. It works when you're fighting and when you're an actual underdog, but when people don't think of you that way and you just look like an exposed group that the bottom fell out of, that doesn't work.
It doesn't work, Chris Long says. So that falls under the category of oblivious, lacking self-awareness. Nick Sirianni just doesn't get it. I mean, the dude literally gets asked last night about his job, and he doesn't even have a legitimate answer. Oh, I care about the guys in the locker room right now. What is that? Again, rhetoric. It sounds like somebody who is just supposed to say something. He doesn't know what to say. He's just saying something. And I know that I understand someone's sitting out there listening on 97.3 ESPN FM, or listening on the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle. You're sitting out there and you're saying, well, what do you want Sirianni to say? Well, frankly, the season's over. So you can stop acting like the Pentagon and just tell us what went wrong. Hey, Nick, what went wrong tonight? Well, we came in with a game plan where we were going to offensively play XYZ, and the Bucs shut down X. We never got the Y, and Z was completely unavailable to us, and that's a big reason why we lost. He could have done that. He could have said that, but he didn't. Instead, he got up there and hemmed and hawed, and as Chris Long said, rhetoric. And all those flowery things are great to say, when you are winning, not when you lose all but one game to end the season and then you lose in the most pathetic way possible in a postseason game. Troy Aikman last night on SportsCenter with Scott Van Pelt said this about the Eagles and their offseason moving forward.
You've got to re-energize a fan base, and to do that, typically there's got to be changes. What changes will that be? I don't know. Will it be Nick Sirianni? I'm not sure. I wouldn't be surprised if it is, knowing Jeffrey Lurie and his background and what he's done in the past. But you cannot go into next season status quo.
Another Super Bowl champion questioning Nick Sirianni and the Eagles. What's that saying? Fool me once, fool me twice, right? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Well, I got not one, I got not two, I got three. I got three guys who all got rings on their fingers. And Troy Aikman knows what it's like to have a team that's supposed to be a championship caliber team and the head coach gets run out of town. You know, Jerry Jones with Jimmy Johnson. And the Cowboys won a Super Bowl with Barry Switzer. So Troy Aikman is a living, breathing example of him and his team that you can fire the head coach and it not go all down the tube just because you didn't reach your goal the year before. Remember when Tony Dungy was running out of Tampa? They traded for John Gruden. They won a championship. There are instances in football history where a team did not succeed the year before. They bring in a new coach and they get the job done. It doesn't happen every time. But it's interesting for me to hear someone like Troy Aikman say that, because Troy Aikman, like I said, he lived through something like that. And as I said, when I look at the Eagles, I see an organization that had no urgency in the game last night. I see a team with low football IQ. They had no backup plan. And leading up to the game and after the game, there was a level of obliviousness from the head coach. Not from the players. This is not a direct accusation of the players, but it starts with leadership. And the two highest guys on the pecking order both let you down last night. You would have thought Jalen Hurts would have gone into superhero mode and tried to win the game by himself once he realized the game plan wasn't working. Instead, it was like Jalen didn't know what to do. Nick Sirianni didn't know what to do. And after the game, we got to listen to these guys give us the same rhetoric they've been giving us all season. It's unacceptable. It's pathetic. And as Troy Aikman said, change is a coming for the Eagles. It has to. Josh Hennick here on GameNight 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle. Georgia Summers Point chimes in on the text board at 609-403-0973. He says, hey, Josh, I just feel numb after what we witnessed from the Eagles the last 8 weeks of the season. I think there hasn't been this monumental collapse in Philadelphia sports history since 1964 when they lost all those games at the end of the season after having built a big lead. George from Summers Point goes on to say, just as their manager, Gene Mauch, did not survive that collapse, I don't think that Sirianni or anyone on his coaching staff can survive that either. I also believe that many of the players should not be re-signed as well. That's from George in Summers Point. Well, we'll get to the players in a bit, George, because that's a different conversation. Because as I wrote at 97.3 ESPN.com, there are 15 free agents of significance that the Eagles have to have a conversation about. And there is a real possibility you might have to re-sign half of them because you don't have better options. But like Gene Mock was let go after the collapse for the Phillies, part of the reason why you're letting go of these head coaches or managers is because you genuinely believe that they are not capable of getting the best out of these players anymore. Look at Derek Barnett. Derek Barnett goes to Houston and all of a sudden gets unlocked and unleashed for the Texans. And I was saying this over the weekend on Twitter X, or whatever we're calling it now. I was saying on social media, I'll just say that, at Josh Hennig on Twitter X, I was saying that this is why coaching matters. Coaching matters in football so much because a coach's primary responsibility is to put a player in position to be successful. Then it's that player's job to execute the vision of the coach during the week. So it's a two-step process. The coach makes the game plan, the player has to execute it. Derek Barnett, this past year, he had 0 sacks for Philadelphia in 8 games. In 6 games for the Houston Texans, he had 2.5 sacks. No quarterback hits for the Eagles. 11 for the Houston Texans. How does a guy go from being utterly and completely useless to all of a sudden being a productive player who's making impact during the team's stretch run of a season and in a postseason game? Well, the defensive coordinator for the Houston Texans is Matt Burke. You may not remember that name, but Matt Burke worked under Jim Schwartz for 2 seasons in Philadelphia. Matt Burke also worked under Jim Schwartz during his entire tenure for the Lions when Schwartz was head coach over there. And he worked for Jim Schwartz in Tennessee. He is very familiar with the Y9 technique. So he looked at Derek Barnett and said, I can do something with this guy. I saw this guy in Philadelphia. I saw what Jim Schwartz did with guys like him. Get me that guy, and I'm going to get something out of him. So this is why, for me, I have to start with coaching. Because at some point, the Eagles have to look around and realize that this coaching staff did a horrible job at getting the best out of their players. Now, I'm not dismissing that there is a lack of talent on this team at specific positions, primarily linebacker and the secondary, where guys are getting slow, they're getting old, or there was a complete miscalculation of how good they are. But on some level, I will not let go of the reality that Derek Barnett, of all people, is playing in the second round of the postseason, having an impact for the Texans, and he did absolutely nothing in Philadelphia. There is a chance that the only way the Eagles get better next year is if they change their coaches. And whether that's all the coaches or just some of the coaches, either way, they better make a decision soon, because this coach hiring cycle is already underway. Jim Harbaugh is interviewing with the Chargers. Bill Belichick is interviewing with the Falcons. Cowboys, they may fire their head coach as well. The only opening that's been filled so far has been the Patriots, and that's because there was a clause in Gerard Mayo's contract for him to be the successor in New England. So if Philadelphia is going to move on from Sirianni, it would behoove Jeffrey Lurie and the Eagles organization to make that decision sooner than later, because the longer you sit on your hands, the later you will be to the party. And the later you are to the party, you're going to have slimmer and slimmer pickings of dance partners. And frankly, you could argue that part of the reason why the Eagles even landed Sirianni in the first place is because they got to the dance late. and there was almost nobody to dance with. And they had to get creative. They had to think outside the box. They had to go talk to somebody they would have never thought of talking to in the first place. And you see what Sirianni is now 3 years later. Honeymoon was good. Second year was great. Third year, you're finding out all of the flaws of that person that you went to the dance with 3 years earlier. And Sirianni is looking more and more like someone you do not want to have a long-term relationship with than someone you want to be committed to long-term. 609-403-0973 is the text board. Also, your DMs into the 973 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle. Brian from EHC will get to you and more of your messages coming up here on 973 ESPN. Josh Hennig hanging out with you on a Tuesday night.
It's Sixers basketball tonight on 97.3 ESPN with the voice of the Sixers, Tom McGinnis, calling all the exciting play-by-play action.
Dominate, put a slam, Kelly Oubre, a running two-hand jam.
It's Sixers Nuggets tonight. Coverage begins at 7:30. It's Sixers basketball all season long on South Jersey's radio home for Philadelphia 76ers basketball. 97.3 ESPN.
Something good to know from First Bank of Sea Isle City. We have all of today's innovative banking products just like the big banks, but we offer something they can't. A personal community focus. Let's get you started with Bill Pay. You save time when you pay your bills online. It's fast, easy, and convenient. First Bank of Sea Isle City, a community bank that delivers more for you every day. Personal service, today's technology, from the people who truly care. Learn more at firstbankseaisle.com.
Member FDIC, equal housing lender.
She's running around. Her breath doesn't smell. Her digestive system is perfect. It has made such a huge difference.
What did this dog parent do for their dog? She switched to Nature's Blend, a premium freeze-dried raw dog food made by Dr. Marty Goldstein, a veterinarian Forbes magazine called the Miracle Worker. It's the easiest way to support your dog's easy digestion, nourished skin, playful energy, and most importantly, their healthy, full life.
I'm so confident your dog will love it. Your order is back with a 90-day guarantee.
Save up to 54% off Nature's Blend and get a free full-sized bag of Tilly's Treasures dog treats. They're best-selling beef liver dog treats while supplies last. Go to drmartypets.com/deal or text DEAL to 511-511. Go to drmartypets.com/deal or shop in over 2,000 stores nationwide. Use the store locator to find the store closest to you. All pets are unique. Your pet's results can and will vary. Message and data rates may apply. Studies available upon request.
With savings at the Home Depot, we'll get your kitchen clicking. With top brand appliances like a GE Profile refrigerator with convenient features like a built-in dual dispense autofill pitcher. Plus, with seamless shopping in-store and online, everything you need for your kitchen is just a click away. Get up to $800 off select kitchen appliances from top brands like GE Profile at the Home Depot. Pricing valid January 4 through 24. Gas ranges and dryers extra. U.S. only. See store or online for details.
I'm embarrassed to say this. I've been using deodorant on my armpits for 30 years, and anytime I noticed odor anywhere else, I thought I needed another shower, I wasn't clean, or I felt like there was something wrong with me. And then my gynecologist told me about Lumi. It's a whole body deodorant for pits, feet, and privates that controls odor anywhere and everywhere on your body. Since Lumi, I never have to worry about body odor ever again, anywhere on my body. And that reassurance is worth every penny.
There's a special offer for listeners. Use code PENNY and get an extra $5 off a Lumi starter pack that comes with a solid stick, cream tube, free product of your choice, and ships free with code PENNY. LUME deodorant.com, code PENNY for an extra $5 off a Lumi starter pack. Love it or return it for free. That's LUME deodorant.com, code PENNY. LUME deodorant.com, code PENNY. That's LUME deodorant.com, code PENNY.
Just clean lines paint, cleanlinespaint.com.
Are you looking to transform your home or business? Look no further than Clean Lines Painting and Power Washing for attention to detail, low stress, and no mess for residential and commercial projects. For a quality job, remember the name, CleanLinesPaint.com. Changing the way New Jersey paints.
CleanLinesPaint.com.
What's holding you back from learning the language you've always wanted to know?
Too hard.
Takes too long.
Not with Babbel. Babbel's lessons take just 15 minutes a day.
15 minutes isn't long.
Nope, and they're fun. So you don't realize you're learning a language, but you are. In 3 weeks, you're able to start having conversations. And Babbel's lessons are built around real life.
And with Babbel, it isn't hard.
It's perfect.
Start learning a new language today. Go to Babbel.com. That's BABBEL.com.
Hey, you're up next.
Ugh, my throat hurts so bad. There's no way I can sing tonight.
Here, try these.
Vicks VapoCool drops.
Yeah, Vicks VapoCool Drops has maximum strength menthol with a rush of Vicks vapors.
Ooh, I can already feel it.
I told you. So, you ready?
I'm ready.
Vaporize sore throat pain fast with Vicks VapoCool Drops.
Go to get your game on.
Your team. Get in on the parlay while in the middle of a party. Go for the sports scene and go for the endless screens. Go to the gallery. Go to Ocean. Go for the win. For more information, visit theoceanac.com. Must be 21 or older to wager or consume alcohol. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
You know, it's very embarrassing. You go from, 10-1 to losing last, whether it's 6 or 7 or whatever we did. Done all the press conferences. We've done all the explaining, trying to be corrected. So, it's hard to do some changes. Frustrating. Hopefully, as long as I play out, I don't have to be part of something like this again.
Last time you heard Lane Johnson speak like that after a game in an Eagles uniform, well, it was before Chip Kelly was fired. The last time Lane Johnson had to speak out like that, the head coach was fired shortly thereafter. And you heard him say it. I never want to be a part of something like this ever again. We predict the changes are coming. By the way, also a Super Bowl champion. All Super Bowl champions can hear from here on Game Night on 97.3 ES. 609-403-0973. That's Brian and he chance to chime in just a moment. But I did mention before we hit the break, because George in Summers Point mentioned in his text at 609-403-0973 about players not being re-signed. Well, over at 97.3ESPN.com, I wrote about 15 Eagles free agents that they got to make decisions on. I'm not going to go break down everyone here on the radio. So, guys, you can look at the full list. But I can already tell you that I don't think a handful of these guys will be back. Fletcher Cox, Shaq Leonard, Nicholas Morrow, Bradley Roby. I don't think those 4 guys are coming back. And I don't think they're coming back because this defense was so bad down the stretch that it's hard to rationalize any of those guys still being a part of this team next year for a variety of reasons. Look, Shaq Leonard and Nicholas Morrow both were major disappointments. Nicholas Morrow, because you basically signed him to fill the void of Kazir White. And he became the guy who got picked on by every team who had a decent tight end. Basically, you saw it last night with Kate Otten. He ain't that special. You saw in other games as well, where it was the 49ers game where Pro Football Focus said that Nicholas Morrow was accounted for 151 yards after the catch against him alone in that 49ers loss. He's been picked on and taken advantage of, and nobody ever made adjustments. He could never get the job done. Shaq Leonard disappointing because This guy, no one said this guy was going to be the all-pro linebacker he was before the injuries. But you were hoping he'd give you a little more than 12 solo tackles and being burned in pass coverage constantly. You were hoping he'd give you a little more, but instead he was a body just taking up space in the roster. Bradley Roby was signed for the express purpose that you were in a situation where Avonte Maddox got injured. You didn't have a legitimate guy to fill in at nickel corner. You tried Mekhi Gardner. You tried Eli Ricks. You tried James Bradbury. You tried all these guys. You even tried Sidney Brown, for goodness sake. And you said, we got to get help. We got to bring in Bradley Roby. Roby was underwhelming. And then he was injured for a few weeks. And then when he came back, by that point, you were like, do we want to play this guy anymore? So Roby's probably not coming back either. Look, any of the guys who were rentals like Leonard and Roby, they're gone. And Morrow's probably gone too, because I think the Eagles realized they got to do more than sign Nicholas Morrow to upgrade the linebacker position. And as I wrote at 973 ESPN.com, I just think Fletcher's tenure in Philadelphia is running out. Not because he's a bad player. He had a productive year with 5 sacks and 17 quarterback hits. But he's cutting into the playing time of first-round picks Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis. The Eagles didn't use Milton Williams barely enough this year. So you have 3 young players on top of guys like Marlon Tuipulotu and Moro Ojomo. So there's 5 guys who could all be playing defensive tackle next year who are not named Fletcher Cox. I think Fletcher ends up in a Cleveland Browns uniform next year because Jim Schwartz is there and their defensive coordinator. I think Cox probably still wants to play a little longer. I don't think he's fully done with football because he had a productive year this year. I think he had some of his best seasons with Jim Schwartz in that Y9 scheme, and I can see him going there. So I break down the full 15 at 97.3 ESPN.com, or you can jump on the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, which is free thanks to First Bank of Seattle. But those are 4 guys that George Summers' point is right. Those are guys who cannot be back next year because either like Roby and Leonard, they were rentals that just didn't work out. You had a guy in Morrow who just isn't good enough to play in this defensive scheme. And then Fletcher, like I said, I think that you got to let him walk because at some point, you got to get more than 49% of your defensive snaps to Jalen Carter. Carter, Davis, and Milton Williams got to take a larger share of the reps moving forward. You drafted all these guys for a reason. You can't just sit on your hands and hope for the best. No, you got to eventually see what these guys have. I want to see what a full year of Milton Williams, Jalen Carter, and Jordan Davis is before I make any grandiose decisions about the defensive line moving forward. And I mentioned Marlon Tuipulotu. Marlon Tuipulotu was the only guy who looked good in the Giants game, the last game of the season. So maybe there is a role for him as a part-time defensive lineman on this team. But Fletcher has to be let go. And I think at this point in Fletcher's career, he's 33 years old. He's played in the NFL for 12 seasons. I think that, you got what you could out of him this year, but you purposely rested him with the express idea that you were going into this game with, hey, we gave Fletcher a rest, so he'll be ready for the playoff game. Well, frankly, he was almost invisible in the playoff game. The plan didn't work. Fletcher ended the game with a half of a sack and a quarterback hit. It's just not enough. Unless you're going to completely overhaul the defense in a way that's going to complement Fletcher, I don't see the reason why you keep him moving forward. And I hate saying it because he's been a big part of this team's success for years. But at some point, I need to see what Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, and Milt Williams can do. I need to see the young guys get playing time. Like the Sixers getting rid of James Harden and letting Maxey have his time to shine. I need to let Fletcher Cox move on so I can get Carter, Davis, Williams, Ojomo, and Tui Pelotu on the field more. Six 403-0973. Someone who texted here. Brian EHT says Bradbury should be released. No excuse for that horrible effort. He looked like he didn't care, wanted no contact. That's from Brian in EHT. Well, the problem is, Brian, is that James Bradbury has what is the equivalent of, in the NBA, they call it a poison pill contract, where you sign these contracts that are so detrimental to your salary cap if you release the guy. And Bradbury has a very detrimental contract for Philadelphia. Bradbury basically has one more year of heavy money against the cap. If you release him outright, you are going to have upwards of $17+ million dead money against the cap. You are actually not saving money. You are pretty much going to pay him to go away. Because of the contract you gave him, that 3 years, $38 million, the first 2 years, that money, you're locked into that money. That was $20 million guaranteed that you gave him of that $38 million. You are stuck with him for another year unless Howie Roseman finds a way to rework that contract, which is certainly possible. But as of right now, you're still paying for that $20 million guaranteed. So either you need to find a new defensive coordinator who's going to use Bradbury in a way that he doesn't get exposed all the time. You got to change Bradbury's position and maybe move him to safety and convert him. Or you got to rework his contract to get out of it. Because as of right now, you can't release him. Cole from LBI chimes in at 609-403-0973. He says, I hope my Jets make another run at Fletcher Cox this offseason. You know, it's interesting because I don't know. Cole, here's my thing. I don't know what's going on with the Jets, honestly. I feel like that the whole Rodgers getting injured, it derailed that team so much. By the end of the season, it felt like guys who just didn't want to be there anymore. I don't know how that impacts the offseason. I would think that Fletcher, I would think the two teams he goes to before he would consider the Jets personally, just based on my knowledge of who he is, are Cleveland and Houston, because they both run the wide nine technique. And that's the defense he has had the most success with in the NFL. By the way, he played with DeMeco Ryans with the Eagles years ago. So he's familiar with DeMeco. He's familiar with Jim Schwartz. Guys, when they get older, like to go places if they have the option that they're familiar with. I put the Jets third only because of the fact that, as you said, Cole, you have a team that already went after him last year. The Jets pursued him last year. So you got to think that Fletcher knows that he is a guy who teams will be interested in. Honestly, Cole, if I'm the Jets, I don't even know what you need aside from some wide receiver help and some offensive line help. I don't think Fletcher would be the highest on my personal offseason agenda for the Jets, but listen, I don't think the Jets could do bad if they brought him in. I think that he would bring a great, role player for that team. The guy just had 5 sacks for an Eagles team that was one of the worst defenses in the NFL the last few weeks of the season. So he's got something left in the tank at least. Jeff from Ocean City chimes in at 69403-0973. He says, where would you rank this season as far as great collapses in Philly sports history? Jeff in Ocean City. You heard from George in Summers Point, who said that he puts it on the level of the 1964 Phillies collapse. I mean, if I had to make a top 5, the 64 Phillies is definitely the 64 Phillies in the top 5. The Sixers falling apart to the Hawks is definitely on the list. That loss to the Hawks was absolutely insane. Let me see here. I mean, that's 3, along with the Eagles this year. The 94 Eagles, they started 7-2. That team beat the 49ers, who went on to win the Super Bowl that year. That team beat 2 other playoff teams that season, and they lose 7 straight games to end the year, which led to Rich Kotite being fired. Okay, so that's 4 off the top of my head. I mean, I don't have a list of every collapse in front of me, but I would say if I had to come up with a 5th collapse by a Philadelphia sports team off the top of my head, Jeff in Ocean City, I know it's probably not going to be on a lot of people's lists, but the 2020 Flyers, they were the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference playoffs. And they basically fell apart against the Montreal Canadiens in that NHL bubble up in Toronto. And I know it's not a traditional collapse like the other teams I described, but, I remember talking to Kevin Durso pretty much every day of that run. And, there was a party with the Flyers and said, maybe the Flyers can do what the Sixers couldn't do, right? Because the Sixers basically completely choked in the bubble and were just like run out of there. And I look at the Flyers, the team that maybe could have been something, and they were an absolute nothing. And the way that they just fell apart and got picked apart by the Montreal Canadiens was embarrassing. So, I mean, if someone was to produce like a list of like the 10 greatest Philadelphia sports collapses, I probably would do a better job of picking a 5th one, honestly. By the way, Cole from LBI chimes in and says, Fletcher was on the Chris Long podcast, I believe. He said it was close time with the Jets last offseason. Well, yeah, it was close time with the Jets because of the fact that the Jets pursued him hard. I don't think that he was going to pick the Jets over the Eagles. I think that's what he was saying on the pod. I listen to Chris Long's pod often. I remember him saying that, the Jets pursued him, but then the Eagles basically came and offered him a 1-year deal. Basically, look, let's run it back one more time. And he really wanted to do that. He really wanted to come back and be a part of a championship run. And hindsight being 2020, it seems like it was a good idea because, one, Fletcher didn't damage his free agent value. Again, you had 5 sacks and 12 quarterback hits. You're showing the world that you're still a productive player. And number 2, the Jets were so depressing this year. I mean, Fletcher might have wanted to retire after this year instead of playing football. So I think it was a good idea he picked the Eagles, honestly, for his sake. So, but yeah, he was on Long's podcast, and he basically was saying that, the Jets, he was pretty close to potentially going to another green color. So you're right. There's a possibility he goes there. I just think that if you are a veteran player of that age and that experience, you're typically going to go somewhere that has a proven track record of success. And I think the Jets were dumpster fire last year in terms of culture and environment. And I know Robert Saleh is not losing his job, but he's on the hot seat next year. You know, you can only get so many mulligans in the world of sports. And for head coaches who are always under the microscope, you just have to wonder, does Fletcher look at the Jets and have a different opinion of them this year than last year? More your text coming up, 69403-0973. That's text board and your DMs into 97.3 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Seattle. I'm Josh Hennig. This is Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. By the way, Sixers basketball tonight, Embiid versus Jokic. Listen, these Sixers giving you something to watch tonight. And here, Tom McGinnis call the action. 7:30 on 97.3 ESPN.
Wake up weekday mornings from 6 to 10 on 97.3 ESPN with Unsportsmanlike with Evan Cohen, Super Bowl champion Chris Canty, and Michelle Smallman.
This fall, the last 2 months has been unprecedented. Something had to happen. You don't go from 10-1 to losing all these games when it's kumbaya in the locker room. Like, something happened. I don't know what it is. I don't know what the issue is.
Brought to you by the Gallery Bar Book and Games at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City.
It's a new year. It's a new day. Save all month long at Matt Blatt Mitsubishi every day. So if you're currently stuck in a loan or lease, Matt Blatt Mitsubishi wants to get you released so you can celebrate this new year and get you into a brand new Mitsubishi Outlander or Eclipse Cross SUV, both with 0 down and 0% APR financing for 60 months. Clearing $450 per week at Matt Blatt Mitsubishi, you're virtually approved. And only Matt Blatt Mitsubishi has a 4-day love it or leave it return policy. So if you're worried that your credit will keep you from getting a new ride, Matt Blatt Mitsubishi wants to finance your future, not your past. Simply Matt Blatt Mitsubishi. Rate qualifications exist. Not all will qualify. $16.66 per thousand finance unapproved with Tier 1 credit. Rebate 10 incentives to dealer. Go to mattblattmitsubishi.com. 844-946-2315 for complete details. Plus tax, license, registration fees. Offers can't be combined. Expires 2/4/24. So come in today and get your deal your way. Located right in the heart of Glassboro for over 30 years.
Denise has been playing jazz for 40 years. Last concert, one of the musicians fell sick with RSV. Respiratory syncytial virus, or RSV, is a highly contagious virus that can lead to breathing problems. This time, she's choosing to help protect herself with Pfizer's RSV vaccine, Abrysvo. Abrysvo is a vaccine for the prevention of lower respiratory tract disease caused by respiratory syncytial virus, RSV, in adults 60 years of age and older. Abrysvo is not for everyone and may not protect all who receive the vaccine. Don't get Abrysvo if you've had a severe allergic reaction to its ingredients. People with a weakened immune system may have a decreased response to Abrysvo. The most common side effects are tiredness, headache, pain at the injection site, and muscle pain. Ask your pharmacist or doctor about Pfizer's RSV vaccine, Abrysvo, respiratory syncytial virus vaccine. For full prescribing information, please call 1-844-989-7284 or visit abrysvo.com. Brought to you by Pfizer.
We're going abroad for the first time in years. To Spain. So we started using Babbel.
And started learning Spanish fast.
With Babbel, you can start having conversations in another language in just 3 weeks.
¿Cómo te llamas? ¿Cómo te llamas?
When you learn a language, you want to actually use it. Babbel is designed with that goal in mind.
In just 3 weeks, we're starting to have conversations in Spanish. Gracias, Babbel.
Babbel, language for life. Start learning a new language today at Babbel.com. That's Babbel.com.
With GMF financing to qualified buyers, excludes Corvette, excludes prior sales.
It's a new year everywhere, but at Bennett Chevrolet, some things don't change because there's still no beating Bennett. That's right, Bennett Chevy kicks off 2024 just like every other year with the best deals anywhere on new and pre-owned vehicles. You still pay what our GM supplier employees pay, not a penny more. Plus, you keep all the rebates, unlike many dealers that give you either or Bennett gives you both. The GM supplier employee price plus all the rebates. And you save even more with Bennett's available 1.9% financing. Looking for used? Get an astounding $8,000 minimum for any old clunker towards any pre-owned in stock. That's at least $8,000 for total junk. So imagine how much Bennett pays for a good trade. And Bennett still offers the best buying experience in the business with a sales team paid on your satisfaction, not how much you spend. Imagine that. Salespeople with your best interest in mind. Together, let's drive at Bennett Chevy, Egg Harbor Township, and BennettChevy.com.
Some days, my active psoriatic arthritis makes it hard to get in the game. Now, the ball is in my court, thanks to treating my skin and joints with Skyrizi, Risankizumab Rizin, a prescription-only 150 milligram injection for adults.
Nothing is everything.
Skyrizi helps with less joint pain, stiffness, swelling, and fatigue. For those who also have plaque psoriasis, 90% clearer skin is possible with just 4 doses a year after 2 starter doses.
Don't use if allergic to Skyrizi. Serious allergic reactions and an increased risk of infections or a lower ability to fight them may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check for infection and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms such as fever, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, or if you plan to or recently received a vaccine.
With Skyrizi, there's nothing like clearer skin and better movement, and that means everything. Ask your doctor today about Skyrizi and visit Skyrizi.com or call 1-866-SKYRIZI to learn more.
97.3 ESPN has teamed up with Seize the Deal for incredible weekly offers from some fantastic local restaurants. Here's this week's big deal.
Get a $50 gift card good for use at Vincenzo's Ristorante in Galloway for just $25.
Get this great deal starting Friday at 9 a.m. at SeizeTheDeal.com. Hurry, chances are this deal will sell quickly. For more info on this great deal, go to SeizeTheDeal.com.
SeizeTheDeal.com.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennick on 97.3 ESPN and on the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City.
Practice and tackling every day is based off angles. When you see the angles of these guys and the way they approach tackling, it's crazy. Like nobody plays together. If you put them guys in a cup, you're not going to see big plays like this. But everybody's playing individual football, and that's insane to me.
Super Bowl champion Ray Lewis complaining about the Eagles' defense last night on the Manning cast on ESPN television. I think it's fair to say that no matter what, the Eagles' defensive coaching staff has to change. I don't know who exactly they would replace with because the whole theory was Sean Desai is a Vic Fangio disciple. And if we can't have Vic Fangio be the head defensive coordinator, let's get one of his guys. And then you said, well, we want to get a veteran coach to help this defensive staff. So let's bring in Matt Patricia, a guy's been around the NFL for almost 2 decades, been a head coach, been a defensive coordinator. If you clean house of just defensive coaches, right? Who exactly are you bringing in? What are you going to do? Call Lovie Smith out of retirement? Like, there's no simple answer to this. I think that Philadelphia has a huge, huge problem on defense, as you heard Ray Lewis explain. And I think that it starts with the coaches. And if you're bringing in a new coordinator to put in a new scheme, I've heard multiple people say this. I know John McMullen, a lot of people said it on the Sports Pass, Mike Gill, and I heard somebody else say this as well. I wish I could remember who it was. It might have been Greg Cosell. I'm not sure, but I've heard multiple people bring up that people are starting to figure out the Vic Fangio scheme. That, Fangio did not do great in Miami this year. He was ahead of all right average season. And that style of defense is starting to be game planned against better. And that maybe that style of defense has kind of run its course. And that happens to all defensive coaches and schemes. Look what happened to Jim Schwartz. Jim Schwartz's defense played elite for Cleveland all year long. All of a sudden, they got to the postseason, and they get shredded by the Texans. The only other team that shredded them this year were the Baltimore Ravens. That was it. So, that just gives you an idea of once teams figure out what you're doing, you have to adjust. And I feel like the Eagles had no ability to adjust at all defensively the second half of this year. As soon as Matt Patricia got in charge, the defense got worse. By the way, somebody said it's a good list you gave, Josh. The 2011 Phillies were sad too. They were sad, but I don't know if that's a collapse because that was more of like a grand disappointment because you look at the pitching staff. You look at the guys who were supposed to be either in their prime or just coming to the end of their prime as players, and you thought that team was going to go places. But I don't know if that's really a collapse. I think it's more of like a great disappointment. Like the 2011 Phillies are like the 2003 Eagles, or they're like the 97 Flyers, right? They're these teams that should have won a championship and they didn't, and you feel hollow at the end of the run. Sixers, Nuggets tonight, 7:30 on 97.3 ESPN.
Listen to Greeny with Mike Greenberg on 97.3 ESPN.
Which loss was more embarrassing, Eagles or Cowboys? I can't believe I'm saying this. I think the Eagles' loss was infinitely more embarrassing. The Cowboys played badly. They were outcoached, they were outplayed, they were outschemed. But the one thing you never questioned watching that game or any game was they were playing their behinds. They were trying as hard as they could. They were doing everything they could. They showed all the frustration you would want to see. They just lost. They just played badly. That's not excusing anything. It's not letting anyone off the hook. And I definitely think there has to be some repercussion from that. I don't think you can just bring that group back and say, we'll just run it back next year and count on it being better. But I think the Eagles' loss was infinitely more embarrassing because they looked like a team that quit. They were completely out of sync. They were completely out of whack. Now they are completely out of the playoffs, and they are completely out of answer.
Greeny, weekday mornings from 10 a.m. to noon on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.